Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jason Tucker, and this is WPwatercooler. Episode number 364. Is WordPress really easy to use? Question mark. This episode is brought to you by ServerPress, Maker's desktop server. Check them out over at serverpress.com. I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me over at Jason Tucker on Twitter. My website is jasontucker.blog.
I'm Steve Zango. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress meetup.
I'm Sadie Reed. I make WordPress, teach WordPress, preach WordPress at Sadie Reed Media on all the things.
My name is Russell Aaron. I do things with WordPress in Las Vegas.
It's Jason Cosper, aka Fat Mullenweg.
Go support us over on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/WPwatercooler. And if you like this stuff, hit subscribe, click the little bell. And if you're listening to us on or watching us on Facebook, you can hit the little share button and share this with your mom.
Facebook.
So when your mom is watching this, she'll be able to see it.
If you're watching us on Facebook, what are you doing? Go do something. Go outside. Just kidding. Just kidding. Be on Facebook. It's cool.
If you shared this on Facebook and your mom is watching, sup, mom?
Sup, mom?
Hey, say hi to your mother for me.
What accent was that?
So who wants to set us up on this this topic that we're about to jump into and most likely steal from a friend of ours?
I nominate Russ.
Russ, go for it.
I nominate Cosper.
Cosper.
He's the one who thought of it.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, Cosper.
I mean, Russ is the one who suggested it, actually.
Oh, I thought you said. I don't know what I'm talking about. Surprise!
I'm the one
After
who
all these
suggests
years.
a lot of
All right,
topics.
Russ. Under the bus.
We all suggest a lot of topics, is what I want to say. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, man. Which is something that, a lot of times the message has always been that WordPress is easy, and especially when it comes to advertising and marketing. And I understand that getting people into WordPress, the message needs to be that it's easy. But a good friend Matt said WordPress isn't easy. There, I said it. And this is a big set. Yeah, not Mullenweg. So this is a really good topic to talk about because WordPress in itself, there's a lot of caveats to get over. There's a lot of things that I think you need to know. Even if you're just a pizza shop person having a website, you should know a couple of things. And this is a very sensitive topic for me alone, But so Matt shared this over here, and this is actually a comment from somebody on his blog who is saying, I was doing something with Squarespace. I was dragging and dropping on the blocks. He didn't say, but Joe Rogan probably suggested he go over there. And he was just saying that he went on with Bluehost and he was building this WordPress site, and he found himself in a hole. And, now his site still isn't built. He doesn't know what's going on. And, he doesn't have the money to do this WordPress thing, but he was sold on the idea that it was really easy. And this is a whole different take on, just arguing it's really easy to install a plugin. Look, you click and do this. Like there's things that keep Steve and Cosper and myself in business. And these are one of those things, man.
Well, yeah, and okay. I will point out something that's interesting here is this is a comment from just this last week on Matt's blog. That post that the comment is on is from 2016. So this is 4 years later, and with the addition of the block editor,
what is that graphic?
Everything else, 7 days, right? But in 4 years, things have not gotten any easier.
Yeah.
I saw, by the way, I just want to say of that screenshot, it was two ladies want to start a what company? Is what I read, because I only saw it really briefly when you flashed it up there. Okay. Anyway, I want to point out one thing. Sorry, I know you were talking and I was joking everything. Did you want to finish a point? I'm trying to be more polite.
Just in the last 4 years, not a lot's changed, even though we've had the block editor, even though, all these other things are being added to WordPress, like on a fairly decent clip. Things haven't gotten easier.
So I want to point something out about that comment. He did not actually say he was sold because he thought it would be easier. He said he would be getting more versatility for the same amount of money. And that's actually true. And so what he was sold on is not a misnomer. It's just that it didn't come with the caveat, oh, and it might be there might be a bit of a learning curve. Because that's really what it's about. It's not so much that it's not easy. It's just that it's different than Squarespace. So if you're going in there expecting the website to act like Squarespace, it's not going to be easy because it doesn't act like Squarespace. Right. I mean, that's the, right? Like if you're coming from Squarespace and going to WordPress, it's not the same thing. So, and I mean, that's the other thing you said on there. My brain doesn't work this way, but like, how is he you know what I mean? Like his brain is trained by Squarespace and having been in Squarespace to work like Squarespace. So that's like if you were to switch from an iPhone to an Android and you're like, oh, the buttons aren't in the same spot and I have to swipe down instead of up. And it's like, right, well, it's a different system. So you have to retrain yourself a little bit. There's a slight learning curve. It doesn't mean that iPhone's actually easier than an Android or anything like that. It just means that they're different. And so I think that's the main issue. Whether or not WordPress is easy is kind of its own thing. But if you're someone transferring from between platforms, whatever they are, that is really going to be the main problem. And people don't realize that. The average person who switch from one phone to the other. I mean, if they switch from one Facebook layout to the other, like the new Facebook layout changes. Or the new Google share buttons on Google Docs. I've literally had people tell me, "Oh, I'm sorry, I struggled to share this. I couldn't figure out the new share buttons." I'm like, that they just made it a different shape. Like it's just not a box anymore. It's just 2 boxes now. But
yeah, but you know that, but they don't know that. And I think that's kind of the point that when I read this was that like, the people like us that know WordPress in and out, it is easy. And that is basically our message, but it's because we look at this every day. And I think it's really hard whether you are changing from iPhone or going to WordPress from Squarespace. It's really hard. But this idea that like, you can just set this up in minutes, that whole mentality, I think, just needs to kind of go away. And the message needs to be, you need to understand a little bit about what you're doing if you're going to get into this game. You don't just go buy cryptocurrency and hope nothing happens. You could lose a lot of money if you don't store it properly. There's a lot of things.
I love how you brought that back to cryptocurrency.
We're talking about
Bitcoin. Buy Bitcoin.
It's the way of the future, man.
We're talking about a couple different things, though, right?
Yes.
You got to define what easy is, right? We've talked about using WordPress. We've talked about
easy like Sunday morning, Steve. That's what it is.
We've talked about
like Sunday morning.
We've talked about using WordPress and the block.
What is mean?
We've talked about installing. We talked about installing WordPress, right? I argue that neither of those things are easy.
Let's be real. His real problem was going to Bluehost. Okay?
Well, and again. Choosing a host isn't easy if you've never done that before.
Right. And with Squarespace, you don't have to choose anything. You choose the amount you want to pay, and that's different than the hosting thing. I would say if you're looking for easy and more out of the box stuff, that the equivalent to Squarespace is actually WordPress.com, not WordPress, the software or the various platforms. But again, I mean, we could caveat this whole conversation with, but people don't know that.
Well, and that's really, I mean, you brought up a good point. That's the apples to apples comparison. If you're comparing Squarespace or Wix to WordPress.org, then it's a whole different, that's a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah. But you will get more versatility for your money using WordPress than using Squarespace. Like that is very much true. You will be able to expand your options. You will be able to integrate with more things. Heck, you'll be able to have better zaps if you're trying to zap stuff around. Like you'll be able to integrate with Mailchimp better. So in terms of the functionality of your website, it is absolutely easier. In terms of setting up a page, I guess it really depends on what you're trying to do. The main difference is, right, Squarespace gives you a layout, and then you just fill in the blanks. And by default, WordPress does not do that.
Okay, so something that I think we need to step back and look at is that WordPress is software that was made for developers by developers, and determined end users can pick it up and actually do pretty big, great things with it. But Squarespace, Wix, things like that, that software is made for end users. WordPress, in adding the block editor and making all these improvements in Gutenberg and having basically upending their entire theme system to make the block editor become a theme system replacement, they're moving towards being more for end users than they have been in the past. But up until this point, this honestly, it has been software that is by and for developers.
So I would actually caveat that to say that the setup of the website has been for developers, because the point of WordPress has always been that anyone could use it to publish stuff, publish, make blog posts, all of that stuff. So there are two with Squarespace. The idea is that you're both setting up the site and using the site. It is like you're an all-in-one. You don't have to do any of the development kind of.
Well, there is no setup.
There's no setup, right? It's just here it is, and now you're just filling in content. The difference, right. That's the main difference. You're not being given a pre-filled website with WordPress. You can actually get one now, and we've talked about that on previous things, but that's the real difference, because people can use WordPress really easily. There's all sorts of institutions and organizations that the person who's using the site to put content on it is not having anything to do with the setup of the site or the running or the management of the site, and they love it because they're just filling in a post, doing the thing, and it shows up and it does its thing, and it's not crazy weird. And so in that sense, it is built for an end user, but there is an extra step there.
I've worked with people that literally don't know the technical terms, but they're like, I don't have this custom field to do this. Like, they can't code it themselves, but like the people that I worked with were able to say, we need this metadata, or we need this taxonomy over here. Like, they knew, they were learning what they were doing, but they had a vested interest in keeping this website going. They're a bigger company. And I think that's a lot different than the person who works for a mortgage company that's doing a one little post every day about whether you should lower your credit score or something. That's a lot different. But the end result's the same. Yeah, you're using WordPress. The daily driving of WordPress is really easy. But even right. trying to tell people that, hey, you got to update your plugins, that's big and scary for people, and that takes the easy out of it. Like, all of a sudden there's this new thing, and I think that's what kind of scares people is, oh, there's this other thing, and it's like, when does it stop? And like, that's kind of what the Squarespace like fills, is like, hey, you cross my palm with $20 and it's done. You know what I mean? So
fortune teller.
This is exactly
what just happened.
You click a button and bam, there it is. It's integrated with Stripe. You click a button and it's integrated with Mailchimp. You cross their palm with $20 and they'll integrate it for you. So
why are you using this weird expression?
You hand them money and they will do it for you. I mean, it's either way you say it. Like I don't like the argument that you can integrate to Mailchimp better, because I think Mailchimp, whether it's on Squarespace or it's on WordPress, they want you to integrate with their full capable fields that you can. I don't think it integrates any better. You get to dictate how it integrates better, but it's not that you use better code or better software.
Specifically, Mailchimp does not integrate well with Squarespace. I literally coming off of a client build where they had a sales site, and trying to get anything into Mailchimp is actually not easy. It's a little more complicated than that. But that is because that's a third party with a third party, and if they have, or two parties, and if they have a disagreement, which they have many, like with who owns the different data and whatnot, then they can take away those features altogether, because they're not third parties. Essentially, they're not a disinterested party. So there can be issues with that most of the time.
But then if Mailchimp isn't making enough money,
they work that out.
If Mailchimp isn't making enough money, they're going to just take that freemium stuff out of their plugin and make Mailchimp Pro. I mean, you can make that argument too.
But then there's things like caching.
They do have that.
But then there's things like caching. There's things like plugin maintenance. There's
all things you don't have to do on Squarespace.
Yeah, all that stuff you don't have to do in Squarespace.
And like Prosper was saying, it's been 4 years, and it's still this kind of this conversation.
Well,
and this
here's
is
the
why
thing.
I'm saying determined end users.
But we're talking about
You have to be willing to keep learning to use WordPress, to keep figuring out what needs to happen. Oh, I want to add this piece of functionality to my site. Well, I have to learn what plugins are out there. I have to learn how to use the plugin once it's installed. Like it's determined end users. It's people who have to always be ready and willing to learn. For the people who just click a couple buttons, not so much.
That's always the hardest part about support, man.
I want to make a differentiation between site management and site use. We talked about this. I talked about this briefly, but this is why these are two different things. So if you're a one-stop shop and a single solopreneur person doing it, then you are both site manager and site user. And those are, in theory, different roles. But you're also then a marketer and a social media manager and a sales clerk and all of these other things, which is incidentally why running your own business is freaking difficult, because you have to wear all these hats and you have to be quote unquote good at all of these things, right? Like It's the same thing for Instagram. Like you have to learn how to figure out how to do freaking Instagram stories. They don't publish a how to do anything on it. Like they're add a new feature and you find out because you see it on someone else's site and then you have to go figure out how to do it, so I would argue that the real problem here is the individual who's literally trying to fulfill the role of what are full-time jobs for multiple people and expecting that to be easy. Like that's really the problem here. So Squarespace and the like, Wix and all of that, they're actually they're doing the site management and building for you. In so doing, you get the freedom of not having to worry about that part, which can be really good for people. However, you are getting not a custom solution. So you're just getting the monolith and you have to write tickets to get support. And you may or may not actually get to be able to have certain customization. And if you want to change templates, you have problems, right? So it's just a trade-off. It's the same thing as, what parts of your work and what parts of your business do you want to shop out to someone, or what parts do you want to do yourself? Like web development is a difficult thing in general. Like look at, there's, how many of us are there? There are 5 of us on here. I can count. You have to be able to count to 5 to be a web developer. And that's...
Oh shit, I can only count to 4. I'm up to 4.
Yeah, so I'm here too. No, but you have to be able to do that.
Sevens.
You
have people who work for you, so it's okay.
In Vegas?
No, I said Steve.
I was just talking about counting.
So you count to 4, yeah.
Yeah, but what I like about Steve is like Steve knows WordPress and he knows the parts of his business. Yes, he has people doing development, but Steve can jump in there and have those conversations. And I think that's my point, is that if you own something, if you put a credit card towards something, you should have a vested interest in knowing a little bit about how this thing works. And whether that's, GoDaddy is the word, or that post types are a thing, you should know something. And it always impresses me when I show up to a place that they don't know what they have in their website, but the owner says, I know that I have backups and I know that I have this, and they're able to tell me that. That's at least a good sign that there are people that are trying to get the message out, that there's some work into it. But if you're putting money towards something, you should at least know how it works.
WordPress is very DIY. Like WordPress, no matter how you look at it, very DIY. And it's not just very DIY. It's the point where you have multiple vendors that you're going to be working with in order to make the final product happen. Where if you go to Squarespace, it's the one vendor and that's it.
And
like I'd have to go, the one screen, the one vendor, the one thing that you have to pay for, and that's it. Where with WordPress, you could literally spend anywhere from like $20 for one plugin to $600 for all the plugins that you need to be able to make the entire stack work. And come to find out that one of them breaks, and it's not your web hosting company that's going to fix it. It's going to have to be the company that you bought that one plugin from to get it resolved.
But if you're doing that versatility, it means that you should be doing it for a reason, right? Like you shouldn't just be building a $600 scaffold of plugins for fun, right? Those should be integral parts of your business. And like Russ was saying, you need to know what those are doing, and you would source those out from different vendors. You know, if you're building a simple site and you don't need to expand and extend what you're doing, then maybe that isn't the right spot for you. I would say actually you could just go to WordPress.com and you'd be totally fine and add on, you know, buttons as you go, and you can actually grow on WordPress.com from the basic all the way up to then being a more elaborate site at the top tier level. So I would say that actually you could still use WordPress, but you would need to use WordPress.com and not just WordPress, the entity from Bluehost. But don't use Bluehost anyway. Sorry, guys. Don't use it. It's not. It's a pain in the ass.
Hashtag not sponsored.
I mean, we shouldn't be sponsored. Like, I don't know. I guess I haven't used them in a while, but like,
I'm just being funny. So the thing, I always look.
Thank you for keeping my ticket cheap.
Yeah, I always look at WordPress. I always compare WordPress to a brick and mortar business. And if you look at the brick and mortar business side of it, do you need to be a plumber to run your business? No, you go and hire a plumber to go and fix the plumbing that's messed up. Do you have to be an electrician in order to run a business? No, you hire an electrician and build it. It's the same thing. All those things are different components that make the business itself happen. Those would be akin to the plugins that would be there and the various people that need to, you know, interact with them. Steve, you have something on your mind. I know. I hear.
Something's a brewing, dude.
Come on, dude. Open on us.
By the way, Bluehost does have managed hosting now. I just wanted to tell you that. Okay, go ahead. Clear the way. He's coming.
The hands are the worst part. Yeah. That's what's got me going, man.
He's got stuff to say.
You know,
does it rhyme with Opify?
There's no, not at all. I think there's so many different segments of customers, right? We're talking about a very particular segment of customer that is going to use a DIY solution, right? The customers that I deal with don't know what they have. They don't know what they've bought. They don't know what components are there. All they care about is that it works. But that's why they hire an agency, right? Or a freelancer or somebody else, right? And so I think what we're talking about is I think that the blog post was specifically targeted at somebody who was doing this on the cheap, right? I'm not insulting anybody, but it's people who are trying to do this because WordPress is advertised as free or near free, right? You know, if you go to a meetup, you'll learn that WordPress is free to get the software, and you have a couple of plugins, maybe the premium plugins, they're only a couple $100. You're all set. You've got a website. That by itself is the wrong message. That's just not true. It doesn't work like that. And I can't count the number of times we've said exactly that on this podcast over how many years, right? So that by itself is not true. It will never be true. It will never be true. And it's not just WordPress. That's true of any software, any DIY software like WordPress. Right? Yeah,
if you're trying to cut corners, you're gonna end up. If you're trying to wire your own electricity, you might get electrocuted.
I argue that it's not even true about Squarespace or Wix, right? Because people that don't know what they're doing, that turn on a Squarespace site, may make a mistake. They have the ability to make mistakes. Good. Yes, so it's not true of even those solutions.
They just have pretty layouts, and so because they have a pretty layout, they think it's a good website. That's really because people still cannot differentiate between web design and web development and the functionality and the way that the picture looks. They're like, oh, look, pretty picture.
It always comes back to your goals, right? What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve, right? And so, I
have a client. I'm going to tell you right now that I've been trying to get them to explain that part to me, and they're like, "Just put it up, and I'll fiddle with it." I was like, "No, but what are you trying to do?" "No, just put it up, and I'll make it get to there." And I'm like, "I can't help you. I don't know what you want me to actually do."
I just put it up and I send those people a bill, and then they're like,
"I need to hire you to do my billing."
And then they're like, "What happened?" I'm like, "I don't know, but I can put it back up again. Here's another $40." You know, like, hey, dude, like they're in control. You know what I mean?
I've got one more point, but Cosper had something to say.
Oh no, I was going to say that I've seen a lot of effed up Squarespace sites too, like very, very, very determined people who just have an idea in their head and want to get it out, but maybe don't have the expertise, the design sensibility, whatever to do it. I've seen some royally effed up Squarespace sites, so it's not just WordPress.
I could care. I couldn't care less about design anymore. Like I've seen some.
Me neither.
I've seen some blogs that are just, dude. Like one of my friends, he's a top Vegas blogger here, and he's running the 2012 theme with just that header up there, full post, getting millions of hits to his site, and it's just kicking ass every day. Yeah, it doesn't care. So I really don't care about the design. I really don't care about the functionality of it too much, as long as it's doing what it needs to do.
People People care.
Well, I care for them. That's part of support, and that's part of what I do. But my point here is that there's more important parts that I think you need to know other than the logo's 350. So like, get rid of the things that really don't matter. And I would rather you take 5 minutes and just learn this thing that kind of matters to your business. And I think that's been my message here.
I think everybody's going to have some different goals, but most people's goals include being found on Google, right? Or I want my business to be found. I want somebody to contact me, right? And so I need to get the word out. That's in most people's goals, right?
Yeah.
And that particular thing is the first thing that you can screw up, right? By not understanding what you're doing. Right?
And by using a Squarespace site, because Squarespace is 100% geared to not having text on the page, and all of their pretty designs are terrible for SEO.
Absolutely. And so in that case, design actually doesn't matter, right? Because Google doesn't care about your design, right? As a matter of fact, they now penalize you for it. Right, so they just changed their algorithm last month to include largest contentful paint. So any site with a hero image at the top got a 25-point ding on their page speed score.
How did I miss this?
It just happened at the end of May. They snuck it in.
God damn it!
Go run your page speed scores, and you're going to see most of your sites just dipped about 20 or 25 points.
For doing nothing. I blame it on the baby.
For literally having a slider on your homepage, or just even on your services page.
That algorithm change was the slider change. It was clearly.
You know what? It needed to come out. Is what needed to happen. I'm so tired of sliders. Dude, like that's the number one thing that usually support comes up is like, we have this thing, and it's usually some stupid Revolution slider thing that I can't figure out for some reason.
Can we talk, though, just for a second, real quick? What you're saying is that Google actually dictates the design trends of most of the internet, and they have shifted that stuff around. And by making that shift, they are going to impact design trends. So in order to stay relevant, Squarespace is going to have to move away from their big designs and they're not going to tell people, oh, this is why we're moving away from this. They're just going to be like, here's the new fresh designs. Aren't they great? And so we're going to see, it's like, did you ever see The Devil Wears Prada? Like how
I love the D wears P. Yeah.
Yeah. How the whatever Anna Wintour says, you don't even know that you're wearing turquoise because we told you to wear turquoise.
This blue was 4 years ago for you by people that
Yeah, that quote, which amazingly, I love that you can just pull that quote up. That one.
I love D wears P, man. That's my jam.
That's what Google is doing. Google is the Anna Wintour of web development. That is
if you've ever used Google AMP, if you've ever been shoehorned off to a Google AMP page, it's pretty fucking clear. Google does not care about design.
Yes,
it's very clear
because
you're here.
White background, black text, and put it in a paragraph form and make it, a 26-point font, so it's very crystal clear to read it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Stop caring about your design and start telling people what you're selling. That's my thing.
Well, that's it, folks.
Done.
That is it. This show was definitely not sponsored by Squarespace. it's
Bluehost, apparently.
Or Bluehost, yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
But no, it's all good. That first contentful paint FCP. I was just loading this on one of my clients' websites. I'm like, oh wow, okay, yeah, they have a monster-sized header that's up there, and yeah, they're getting dinged pretty hard, especially on mobile. So Good
Gotta
stuff,
be ready for
folks.
Google. If you just listen to Google, Google has been saying that for a long time. So if everyone just would listen to Google, then they wouldn't get like just slapped when when this new stuff comes out.
A mnemonic I like to use for First Contentful Paint, FCP, Finsane Clown Posse. I mean, that's how it sticks in my head. It might help you.
Finsane?
So, go ahead and use that. Finsane Clown Posse.
I just found an awesome source from WP Rocket on improving First Contentful Paint. Like, they literally have an article up. So if you use WP Rocket, you should go read that article. That's where I'm going right after this.
Surprisingly, that was easy to Google. So I wonder if they've got a header. What is in their header? Probably not.
All right, folks, we're out. Here's our intro and our outro. See ya. If you want to support us, go over to patreon.com/WPwatercooler. We'd really appreciate that. Here's some fine folks that have helped us out on Patreon. And subscribe to this content. Click that little bell. If you're on Facebook, you can hit the little share button and the likes as well. We're a podcast, both audio as well as a video show on YouTube. So feel free to go follow us over there. You have a good rest of your day. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.